Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone. This is Luda Kopakina with GAI Insights. Welcome to Daily AI News, where we rate news essential, important, and optional, helping you navigate the avalanche of AI news that happens every day. Here with me, I have John, Paul, Ankaj, our regular crew, and Vivek Mukhatia, who is the AI engagement lead for customers in Pfizer, who has usually a tremendous perspective. Thank you, Vivek, for joining.
Thank you for having me, guys.
Tremendous. So let's start with the first article, please, Ankash.
Sure, Luda. Just bringing up my screen. Okay, so the first one that we have for today comes from OpenAI, and OpenAI has adopted Anthropic's MCP standard, which connects AI models to data.
Yes. When NCP came out, we had a debate how important it is. We didn't know whether the uptake would be significant. And it was at the end of 24. Now we know it's significant. OpenAI is putting it in as a tool. So, what did you think about this, John?
Yeah, well, I was kind of between optional and important on this. The general trend of figuring out what the standards are for the different components of the semantic operating system, I think, is really important topic. OpenAI's adoption of this. The only reason I thought about making it important is because of OpenAI's market presence. They're continuing to lose market share to other models, but they continue to be the model leader, as far as we can tell from any of the data. So I'm really on the fence here. I'd be happy with either. I'm recommending optional, but that's kind of where I am.
Okay. Vivek, what did you think?
Yeah, I was similar. I was more leaning towards the important part because this collaboration, it makes development even more easier for most developers, and MCP, it allows for even citizen developers like myself to connect, and it's been integrated really well into these vibe work or vibe coding applications like Cursor and Lovable and things like that. So just having access to OpenAI backend and them integrated with those is just going to make development, and I like the standardization that we're moving towards. So,
Yeah,
but I could be, either way.
it's interesting. It seems like what's happening, it's two camps. One is native data integration, and then these more impactful or more powerful models, they're not native in some sense, right? So these tools are critical for them to have access to data, but it still needs to get wired through something. So this tool is important for that group of vendors. So in that sense, it's important because it's a trend and there will be two groups, right? One is native, one is not, and how well it's integrated will become as important as for development over time. Paul, what did you think?
I was actually more even on the essential side. I think for industries to expand, you need the major players to pick it up. People have been really dating myself through the EDI wars, know that all those standards in that EDI world didn't pick up until Ford said 850, the EDI standard for purchase order was it, and then the auto industry picked up and went forward here. For me, it's important for the AI leaders to know about this, that this isn't just something on the research thing, and I think to encourage their dev teams to embrace it and learn about it because they want we need interoperability at the model level and throughout these things. So I had important / essential.
Okay. I was more on important. So let's between optional, important, and essential.
The whole range here.
Let's go important for the reason that it is essentially by Anthropic and OpenAI adopting this. It's sort of pseudo standard. So that's on the important side. Let's mark it as important and proceed, please.
Okay, the next one comes from OpenAI, and it's a case study about how Zendesk is using OpenAI to build adaptive service agents focused on resolutions.
Yeah, Zendesk is a large player in the services area, 1.6, 1.8 billion in revenue, about 6,000 people around the world. So it's an interesting study. What did you think about this, Vivek?
Yeah. For an AI leader who's focused on customer experience and automation, this is important. But overall, I give this an optional because this type of implementation we've seen already. I think this is a good case study. Again, this case study doesn't provide as much details into how it is being impacting these customers, but otherwise they have a nice platform that is agentic and is using some of the advanced OpenAI models from a deep thinking perspective or test and compute perspective, and orchestrating the entire customer journey and saving a lot of time. So that's the claims, but some of these new functionalities are only being launched with some pilot users. And I would love to see a little bit more data for it to elevate to important. But it's a nice back pocket article to continue to in this space. That's my perspective.
Okay. Optional suggestion. John, what did you think?
Yeah, I was going to give this an important. I think this nice article talks about how agents are used. More broadly, customer service is a high wins work area when you think back to words, images, numbers, and sounds, and certainly like software, one of the critical functions to have generative AI in here. Zendesk is I don't know if they're the market leader, but they're certainly one of them, and and this lays out a lot of how this is starting to get put together as really as they say, service as software. So I was going to give it at least an important.
Okay, so I was between optional and important, was leaning toward important for the following reason. So they focus in this discussion about resolution and the visibility in how the model actually gets to its resolution, and presenting the way it's thinking. Not new, but focused on resolution and good resolution with a reinforcement learning. So there's some new ideas here. Vivek is right; it's new, and they haven't really been tried. But on the other hand, it's just I think it's important to voice it to the market. What did you think, Paul?
Important. I agree.
Important. Okay, market is important. Let's proceed.
Okay, the next one that we have is from Google Research, and they are deciphering language processing in the human brain through LLM representations.
Yeah, this is fascinating. I was vacillating between optional and essential. This is like a glimpse into whether LLMs work as our human brains work. And they worked through using sensors that they attach to humans and experimenting over the last number of years. They essentially show that the mechanism is the same. The structure of how LLMs work internally versus our brains. Our brains work sequentially, LLMs work somewhat in parallel to predict the next word, both on the intake and generation. So it's a fascinating findings. They've generated a number of papers in Nature, and but I was not sure whether we should market essential for our leaders. It's not immediate impact, so it's optional, but in terms of its insight, it's essential. What did you guys think? Vivek?
Yeah, I agree with you, Luda. This is fascinating read. I think it came up with more questions than suggestions. My idea around, I think this type of research is going to be very valuable when we do brain computer interfaces, or understanding these models as cognitive models, not as generative models. And then I think there's one really key insight that I found, that why, again, these models are looking at hundreds of thousands of words simultaneously versus a human brain. We look at words in kind of sequentially, in the sense that that's why we are so much more efficient than these LLMs in terms of energy consumption. So, but does this help lead to more efficient systems? And I think this research is so vital for us to make those leaps and do these algorithmic innovations that we continue to do in this space. So
Paul,
I was it important, at least.
okay,
Yeah.
great. John, what did you think? Oh, he's on. Yeah, you're mute.
There we go. Yeah, I was the same place you were, Luda, optional or essential, but I think I'm landing on important, because the way I think about important is something that if you have time, you should understand. And I think that the notion that we're going to continue to find analogies and correspondence between human, thinking and machine thinking. I don't know. As I think of our AI leader, and we're really talking about a business context here, I guess I'm going to come down on optional, but man, it's awfully fascinating.
Yeah, it really is. Paul.
Yeah, I'm very optional. I mean, I think if you're individual, personally interested, but this is very optional for business stuff. But John, I would like you to share your analogy of birds and planes. I think that's irrelevant here. I've used that analogy before.
Yeah. I think that for me, artificial general intelligence and as the machine conscious, I think is a total red herring, because I think of these things as similar to airplanes versus birds. Airplanes fly, birds fly. They fly very differently. I mean, there's some correspondence, right, in terms of they fly through air and the physics are, help them fly, but how they fly is very different. And so I think machines already think. There's no question in my mind they think. They just think differently. And I think worrying about whether or not they're conscious like humans, I think, is kind of silly, because there's so much about human consciousness we can't even define or or understand. Something like the placebo effect in drugs, we have no idea what that is. But the idea of machines being autonomous and having agency and so forth, that's very real. And I don't really care if it corresponds to a human or not. We just look at its behavior.
Yeah.
And John, I think just to riff on that a little more, I think too much comparison starts leading it starts blinding you to your observatory piles. You need to observe these things and just understand how these machines are working. They're just amazing. And
yeah, I mean, the way I think about it is we have a continuum of robots from not having a very strong symbolic model of reality all the way through having a strong one, not having a lot of agency all the way through having a strong one. So my washing machine is a kind of robot, but it's got very little semantics and it's got very little agency. But now we're starting to get very broad semantics and very broad agency. So anyway.
Okay, let's mark it as optional. However fascinating it is, it has little value, but people who are interested will catch it in the title, so in the news. So I think we'll go optional, unless you really have vehement opposition to that. We'll mark it optional. Okay, guys?
I'm just highlighting that Kevin's agreeing with optional as well. So he's thank you, Kevin, for.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kevin. Okay, great. Let's proceed. Please, Ankash.
Yes. So the next one comes from Anthropic, and this is an interesting research where they are tracing the thoughts of a large language model.
Another one of saying, okay, we've created something. It's a black box. What's happening inside? Now comes from Anthropic. What did you think about this one, Vivek?
Yeah, I'm in the similar space between optional and important here. Again, we continue. This is really interesting, right? That these labs are now, again, continue to get insights into the inner workings of the black box. And some of the, at least this research, they provided some conclusions around their early research on these, current state of models. So will they be applying the same, our conclusions apply to the next generation of models? We actually don't know. But what they found was, and again, this tool is great for model auditing, compliance, alignment. So there's importance to the AI leader. They found that these models at least work in the same state space as language is created. The other one was that they start thinking ahead of time in terms of what the answer looks like. And then, of course, we know the hallucination that allows giving plausible answers if prompted. So there's some really interesting findings for an AI leader, at least to build systems that are more explainable. But overall, I was between, again, optional and important here. So
Okay, John, what's your thoughts here? Are you on mute?
I actually thought this was important, and the reason is explainability is such a huge thing, and now we're starting to get into some of the guts of how you can hack around with explainability. So I actually sent it off to a couple of our clients this morning already about, I think this very powerful paper when you start looking at both the this overall top paper is good, and then some of the papers underneath. I didn't have a chance to review any of those in detail, but they look incredibly robust. And so, I think that this is important because explainability and trust is so central to how we actually use these things in production. So important for me.
Yeah, I was also on the important side versus the previous article. This one goes into the transparency and much more understanding about hallucination and the experimentation with suppressing certain things and then seeing what the model does when they're suppressed. It gives us a glimpse of how we can potentially control hallucinations or predict hallucinations.
Right.
That is giving us the transparency and visibility. That's actually quite important. Paul, what did you think?
Yeah, I had important for well, and just want to highlight a few things. I mean, we've talked a lot about 30 years of deterministic software solutions, and these are probabilistic here. And the whole industry is driving like a freight train, saying, I want the benefits of both. I want all this generative capability here, but I want full transparency. I want full explainability here. I want the black box, the deep black box here. And this is an important step on it. And in my simplistic brain, the black box, Vivek, is the water's starting to lower a little bit here. We're starting to get more explainability and traceability and logic to go back in there. So the blackness is getting a little lower here. And I think this trend is going to continue as all this algorithm innovation continues and this massive investment. So from AI leader, who's always dealing, in my experience, always dealing with internal discussions on why are there errors, or why there's hallucinations, or why is this probabilistic here, or guarantee me there's no model drift, or guarantee me that my customer support will never get the wrong answer, or guarantee there'll never be a bad recommendation to a customer service rep. This is important trend, so important.
Okay,
Yeah,
can you live with important?
Yeah, I can. Yeah, absolutely. And I think we are moving towards, we are pushing the boundaries in healthcare and legal and all these areas where explainability is so important. So I agree with you guys that now I was in between the two. I'm pushed to important now.
Okay, great. Okay, important it is. Let's proceed, please, Ankash.
Sure, Luda. So the next one that we have comes from Ideogram, and Ideogram has launched Ideogram 3.0.
Yeah, isn't this fascinating? If you go to images, Ankash, show us what they could do. It's the branding, the ease of branding is just really cool. In one in one click of a button, you can get to the front page in your color and whatnot. What did you think about this, John?
I had this as important. It's beautiful. It's visually beautiful. The idea of being able to sample a style and to lay it down. We have other tools like this. Prisma does a similar thing for still photographs and so forth. So I don't know. It's between optional and important. The quality of it's very, very good, and I just think that. I think so much of what we're going to do here with the generative AI is going to be visual and audio and voice. And because, if you look at the two media categories that are growing like crazy, one is short videos and one is podcasts. And, that is, visual and sound and voice. Right. And so I think that's why I think it's important. And the thing that's going to happen too is that people are going to have to up their game. So I don't know. I'm old enough to remember when the um, Soviet Union fell. The first thing they did, and Soviet TV used to be just horrific, right? I mean, it was just so boring and so forth. And so the first thing when the that I noticed from the media coming out of the Russia after the Soviet Union fell was that it felt much more Western. And what I mean, it's just the quality just came up tremendously. So I think a lot of marketing materials for organizations are going to look like Soviet TV compared to Fox News, and people are just going to have to up their game.
Mm. Paul, what did you think? It's in the category of everyday miracles, I think. But what did you think?
Yeah, I actually had it as essential because I think one of the things that the AI leader needs to do is continue to make sure their colleagues and other departments are staying current and aware of this. And brand consistency and brand creativity and brand realism is a really important topic in the marketing area, obviously. And, I continue to find they, like all the other teams, have a hard time keeping up here. So if essential is forwarding a key article or key trend to your colleague in marketing, I would argue essential for them.
Interesting. Ankaj, if you can scroll to the brand section in the photos. So effectively, you could give it here. So you could give it a name and say, I want a logo, and then I want a marketing materials, or I want a landing page. It creates it instantly, and it's all cohesive. So you can replace your branding or upgrade your branding on the click of a button. What did you think about this, Vivek?
Yeah, I would have given it an important. I landed on optional because of the 4.0 announcement earlier this week, and it did essentially the same thing. But again, the quality, the realism, the embedded text, and getting all of those things right is just we're going to the next version of images and branding and marketing collateral. So I can support important, absolutely.
Important.
Feel the power of the chalk, Luda. Just feel it. You're in the fact classroom.
Well, I was between optional and essential, so I'm just like, no help here, and cutting in the middle doesn't cut it. Okay, let's go essential on this one, with the notion that the ease of upgrading branding is becoming really, really easy.
Yeah.
And so it's becoming the click of the button and getting it. So when you have tools like that, it's a crime not to get your brand up to snuff. Okay, let's proceed then. Agree with Paul. Okay, great. Kevin agrees with Paul. Wonderful. Essential. Oh, right. Okay, perfect. Let's go last one.
Yep. So the last one comes from Lovable and LangChain and talks about how Lovable uses Langsmith to debug and monitor agents in production.
Right. So Lovable, if you haven't tried it, it's an interesting platform. There are others, right? But this particular one makes it very easy to create prototypes, the version 1 of without any coding. And what this article describes is how they get a glimpse into running of it and removing. So the developers of Lovable can glimpse into what's the model doing and where the blockages are, and remove them or address them at runtime, right? So this is really, I think, critical technique, because we would need more and more of that for systems in production to have an insight of what's happening in there, so inside the system. So I marked it as important. I could actually be talked into essential because of the importance of this technique. But both the Lovable and the technique actually caught my attention. What did you think about this, Vivek?
Yeah, and Lovable is one of the, if not the fastest growing startup in European history in terms of its ARR in the first 3 months since they've existed. So it's an excellent tool. I've tried it. I agree from the back end perspective, ability to diagnose these very complex agentic workflows that are happening in the background is important. I gave it important. Well, it was between option and important because they didn't provide much more details beyond that, and how many, how are they actually, what kind of metrics they're using and things like that. But observability is so important these days, and we've been talking about it all day today. So
yeah, that's true. But they're using Lang Smith, right? So this is a system that that they were able to do that, right? So that's probably not that difficult per se. So yeah. John, what your thoughts? You're on mute. You're on mute, John.
Paul, I think Paul, you can go first. I think he's talking to.
I had optional on my mind.
John probably also optional.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. No, I had it as optional, but you convinced me to important.
All right. No, I really think it needs to be flagged. Okay. Important it is. Any announcements as Ankash prepares the scorecard?
Yeah, Learning Lab on Monday, 7:00 Eastern, 4 Pacific, will be our friend Alden at Custom GPT, who's actually going to go through a in-depth, hands-on demo of Mongoose AI. That's a breathtaking demo, or the new model out of China. It's right up there with DeepSeek. Few people have access. He has access to it, and if people have been following Twitter, people have been using it, are very impressed. I'm still on the waiting list, so join us Monday at 7:00 Eastern.
Wonderful, thank you. So we have today. We have 1 essential, 4 important, and 1 optional. And essential is the new branding trend that we think it's worth flagging. All right. Happy Friday, everyone. Thanks for listening. Thank you for participating, Kevin and others. Really appreciate it. We'll see you on Monday.
Subscribe and like.
Subscribe and like.
Thanks, guys. Yeah.
And thanks, Vivek, for joining.
Thank you,
Really
Vivek.
appreciate your input. Thank you.
So